What is good, Tesla family? It's Ray J back with another video, and in this one I'm going to be talking about the one and only Tesla stock, what you should be looking after for the future. I'm also going to break down what the news, data, and technicals are telling us about the overall market, and how this may affect Tesla, and what my price prediction is for tomorrow. And before I break anything down about Tesla, before I get into any more details, I do have to mention a couple of things before starting. Firstly, I'm not a financial planner. Make sure you take none of this as financial advice whatsoever. And also, if you guys can, please smash the like button if you want to see more videos like this. It not only benefits me, it benefits the entire Tesla community as a whole. And the last things, if you guys can, please check out the Moomoo link down below and in the description. If you sign up for Moomoo, the link down below, and deposit $100 into the account, you're guaranteed 7 free stocks, and 5 out of those 7 free stocks could be a free Tesla share. It's a limited time offer. The offer ends in just 5 days, so check it out before they run out. With that out of the way, let's get on with the video. Tesla was down 0.94% for the day on Friday, and overall, we did once again see another red day for Tesla, and that's despite the fact that the SPY and the NASDAQ and QQQ tried to get a bit of a bounce at the end of the day. Now, despite that, it is actually telling us that Tesla has some relative weakness now because Tesla could not actually turn green during that time. And right now, our MACD is telling us that Tesla's losing more and more momentum as the days go on. But the real question is, could Tesla try to get a bit of a bounce first? Could Tesla try to push up first before it ends up coming down to fill this gap? Or will this thing just end up tanking from this point on? In my opinion, that will depend on the overall market as well and the news cycle. And so far, the news has been against Tesla heavily. I did mention to you guys last week that Cathie Wood sold over $27 million worth of Tesla shares on, I believe that's on Thursday. And we also had more negative news affecting like a hacker that actually hacked the Model 3 computer and other factors like that. So far, the news is now against Tesla, at least as of right now. And we're also going to continue to see it most likely continue on the path, which could drag Tesla down even lower. But I first want to break down some data affecting the share price. Now, the first thing that's actually some very good news that came out was the fact that Tesla's Giga Berlin turns 1, and it also reached 5,000 vehicles per week. So that's a very, very astonishing accomplishment. 5,000 vehicles per week, 52 weeks a year is going to be equivalent to over 250,000 plus vehicles every single year from this production. I think that's very, very awesome news. I mean, this could actually be a catalyst that tries to push Tesla up just temporarily. But overall, I don't think that's enough to really help the share price given what's showing right now. Elon Musk also congratulated them on his Twitter, once again congratulating the big team in Germany. I have to say the same thing. I think this was very, very impressive, and it's only been out. This Gigafactory has only been out for about 1 year. In my opinion, that's some very, very awesome news, and I can't wait until it starts to produce 10,000 cars and then 20,000 cars every single week as years and years pass by. So I'm very, very bullish on Tesla because of this. But one thing that's very important to note is the fact that we're approaching the ending days for the Model 3 to qualify for the EV tax credit, and we're actually starting to see a big decrease in demand for Tesla, at least temporarily. We are starting to see a big increase in the inventory levels. This is now showing us that hundreds and hundreds of Teslas are now being hoarded as of right now, and we need to see this actually come down in order for Tesla to continue to improve. Now, when this happened, the last time we saw it reach these levels, we actually saw it immediately getting bought right back. And ever since the news came out about Tesla, or at least some of their models not qualifying for the EV tax credit, we're starting to see demand shift, and we're starting to see more and more of the inventory basically back up. I'm hoping this changes by the time we get to April. I'm really hoping for that. But if this keeps uptrending like this would not be as good for Tesla's deliveries in the USA. Now, when it comes to the month of April, we're going to have two big catalysts that I talked about yesterday when it comes to Tesla's deliveries and also their earnings. I believe they're still going to be fine because of how well they're doing in like China and also in Europe as a whole. And overall, the inventory levels have been low for almost all of the quarter, except for like the very end right now. It's starting to, it's starting to maintain these high levels for longer periods of time. I'm hoping this comes down once again. We need to see that happen. I do think demand could shift because of the EV tax credit, but at the end of the day, I don't think it's going to be that horrible for Tesla because there is still high demand for them anyways. I believe a lot of investors, a lot of people that have lots of money will continue to buy them up, especially in states like California. Now, when it comes to the market, I want to break down one more very, very big factor, and that's what's going on with SPY. SPY has almost a million puts expiring not tomorrow, but on Friday. We have about 1.5 million actually, and we have a 2.67 put to call ratio. So the majority of investors have puts on SPY for next week, and every single day we do have high put to call ratios. But I want to note that there aren't too many puts expiring on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, or even on Thursday. Not really too many. So I'm not anticipating that the market is just going to rally and rip to the moon on those days. I think it's a little bit unlikely at this point. So I do believe it's possible for the market to actually push back a little bit, especially going into Monday and Tuesday. And then the market makers, if that does end up happening, will be incentivized to push us up again at the end of the week. They might try to get SPY back to 395 at the very end. It's a real possibility, and I just want everyone to be prepared for this just in case. Now, I also want to break down something else that's very important, and that is what's going on with the data coming out for the week. We do have some manufacturing data coming out on Monday, and also the Fed, Jefferson, is going to be speaking, another Fed speaker tomorrow at about 1 o'clock p.m. This is actually in Western time and Pacific time. So a couple of hours into the market open. And then for Tuesday, we have some retail inventories data with some more housing data and a couple of Fed speakers. Wednesday, we have mortgage data, not too important. None of these days are like that significant compared to Thursday and Friday because we have initial jobless claims and GDP data coming out on Thursday. And then on Friday, we have the PCE data coming out. That is going to be absolutely massive. Now, for Tesla's share price, we are actually lacking in volume right now. We only got 116 million in volume just on Friday, and that is not a good sign. We need Tesla to see very, very high levels of volume to push the share price up typically. And when the volume dries up like this tells me that what pushes the share price up could be short covering or it could just be a lack of buying pressure. Now, I'm not really seeing a whole lot of buying pressure like before, and the overall stock is starting to show more signs of relative weakness. The price price ratio is continuing to slide. It might continue to drop even more from here. It looks like it's trying to hit this peak right here. And as it slows down, this could actually negatively affect the share price. Looking at short volume, we've been seeing a bit of an increase in short volume on Tesla. We actually saw about 62% of the volume just made up of short volume and also selling pressure just a couple of days ago. So we're continuing to see more shorts pile in, and we're continuing to see more and more shorting for Tesla and more selling pressure dictating the volume. Now, many Wolf Research analysts and other ones out there are now giving Tesla not the best ratings. They're saying that you should hold on to them, but at the same time, it might actually underperform a bit temporarily. I don't know exactly what their backing was for saying this, but they could have some good points. And they actually mentioned, I believe, previously that the margins could actually negatively affect the share price. That's a possibility, but we'd have to wait until earnings comes out for us to get more confirmation on claims like that. But as analysts are turning like less bullish on Tesla, this could also negatively affect the share price, at least to some degree. Compared to the overall market, Tesla's holding up quite nicely, but if the market starts to slide a bit, this will affect Tesla as well. I'm going to show you some important levels on SPY too. Tesla tends to be green about 53% of the time on Mondays, and we tend to be green only 51% of the time on Tuesdays. So the odds are not heavily favoring Tesla, at least by the time we get to Tuesday. By the time we get to the fourth hour of the day, that's when Tesla tends to perform a lot better. Now, as far as the short interest goes, you've seen a lot of shorting on Tesla over the last couple of days, 20 to 25 to 26 million shares being shorted every single day until Friday. We did see some shorts slow down. Only about 17 to 18 million shares were shorted, which is still quite a bit. It was still quite a bit of shorting on Friday. We might see a continuation of this, so please be very careful. The shorts can be absolutely relentless, and you have to be very careful when they start to pile into Tesla. So now what's going to happen to Tesla? Is Tesla going to tank from this point? Well, in my opinion, I do believe that Tesla is showing some signs of relative weakness, but it's also going to matter what the market does. What is the market going to do at this point, and how may this dictate Tesla? Right now on SPY, we've been respecting a nice downtrend, and we are forming what appears to be a bear flag, which means that the odds do favor us potentially coming down eventually, but I just don't know if SPY is ready to start tanking now or if it's going to try to hold up a little bit. Now, I want to break down the bullish and bearish possibilities and what I think is most likely going to happen to SPY and also for the NASDAQ. What I'm seeing is we're sandwiched between the 50 moving average and the 200 moving average. We also once again have this bear flag formation. If we want to turn bullish, if you want to see the market turn bullish, I just want to note that there's nothing fundamental to back up a move like that. The news has been heavily in the bears' favor, not because it's solely biased, but also because of the fact that the Fed made some very big announcements. Janet Yellen mentioned the fact that we cannot trust the banks as much, or at least she implied that. She did mention the fact that once again, the Fed may be put in a position where they have to continue to bail out these banks. And there were other claims being made about inflation over the weekend. I know Bullard was saying that the Fed has to continue to raise rates. There's no sign of a pause in his eyes, not a pause, a cut in his eyes until 2024. There was also news about Russia that came out over the weekend. I mean, the odds are just not favoring the bulls based off the news cycle and the fundamentals. But the market can be very illogical. So I want to prepare you guys by talking about some very important levels first. So if we break the 50 moving average on the daily chart on SPY, if this breaks this 399 level, this is a major resistance. SPY has been getting rejected around here for the past 6 days. If we break the 50 moving average around 399, there is a possibility we could be forming a giant head and shoulders. And I do apologize if this chart's kind of small. I could try to make this a little bigger for you guys. Hopefully, this is big enough. But if anything, this could be like a left shoulder, this could be a head, and there is a possibility where we could form like a right shoulder and then start tanking later on. That's a possibility, but in my opinion, the odds as of right now are unlikely because the news cycle has been very negative and we've been hit with some very negative news. Now, if you're bearish for SPY, if you think SPY is going to tank, you're going to be watching the 200 moving average around this $389 level. That's so important because if we break 389, the major support where we bounced off of on Friday, if we get a clean break below that, we're most likely going to tank to 385. And if that fails, there's 380. 380 is going to be super, super important because if we break below 380, we're going to test around 377. If we break those areas, the algos are going to flip and they're going to start selling very hard, and the market could actually crash. It's going to start tanking very hard. That's the reason why the bulls are trying so hard to keep the market up right now, and they're using whatever tactics and manipulation they can. The market makers are also playing a big role in that too. So, what is most likely going to happen to SPY? In my opinion, going into Monday, we're either going to see some downside because the news was very unlikely, or the news was very, I'm sorry, negative, or we might see this thing pop up a little bit more, just a tiny bit more, and then try to fall. The candles, this one was looking very bearish on the FOMC day. The one on Friday looks a little bit more bullish. The candles are just all over the place. We're very indecisive, and we're just going to continue to chop between this range until one of them breaks. Until we break one of these moving averages, that's going to dictate where we end up going. But the odds do favor downside, once again, because of the news and other factors. Now, when it comes to NEO is, in my opinion, starting to show some signs of bearish price action. NEO could start to fill this gap very, very soon, taking it down to the 8.7 zone or even lower than that. This is likely going to be dictated by the NASDAQ and also the tech sector. The VIX got a bounce off 20. There's a good chance the VIX might try to keep going up from here, but the VIX actually had a bearish candle on Friday. So it's very indecisive, balancing once again between the 50 moving average and the 200 moving average. Whichever one breaks will dictate where this thing goes. Now, the VIX is telling us we might see a little bit of upside for the market temporarily before this thing bounces. It might try to bounce off 20 again, then start flying. That is very possible. And then if it breaks this like 24, this is about, let me see, 24 flat zone. If it breaks that cleanly, it's going to fly and get closer to 30. That's going to be very bearish, but we first have to break this red line, this 200 moving average first. I think that's likely going to happen later on, very, very soon. I don't know if the VIX is going to come down first and then break out, or if the VIX is just going to try going from here. It could be either one of them. The manipulation in the market makes it very hard to predict. But overall, I do see some downside coming eventually. Amazon, in my opinion, managed to hold up at the end of the day. The overall candle does look a little bit more in the bull's favor. But once again, we're also losing momentum on the MACD. I don't know if Amazon's going to get one last pop and then this thing starts dropping, or if it's just going to drop from here. It needs to be one of those two, most likely, in my opinion. We also have this gap down here in the 92s. I do believe that's eventually going to get filled. But my best bets would be Amazon might try to balance a little and then end up tanking. That's most likely going to happen. Finally, for NVIDIA, I just want to note that there appears to be an unfilled gap about right here. Let me see if it shows on the hourly. I think it's in the 271.8 area, somewhere around there. I believe I saw it somewhere. But the bottom line is Nvidia could try to bounce and try to get to this 20 period moving average, maybe get a little higher, and then this thing might continue to drop because this is almost looking like it's flagging right now. Right here, we could be seeing this bear flag right here. It drops really hard. The bear flag is forming, pushes up a little bit more, and then this thing continues to slide, dropping lower and lower, breaking below 266, 264, 260. That's very, very possible. But if you're bullish, if you still think the market's going to keep going, well, the very strong resistance is 275. It does look like we kind of topped around there. It looks very distributive now. The odds do favor this thing either like pushing up a little bit more than dropping or just straight up dropping from here. It's got to be one of those two most likely in my opinion. On Apple, I just want to note Apple once again held up quite nicely after we got some bullish news involving Lucid and also the things that Tim Cook said about the employees, doing more checks on them, and also the news about them investing more in theaters. That was some pretty decent news. This could be another bear flag that's forming. Apple might try to push up a little bit more to this like 162 area, then it might start tanking later on. It still looks like it's in a topping process, however. And if it does end up doing what I'm saying, like a small bounce and then it ends up dropping, or if it just drops immediately, either way, I see it most likely coming down to retest 157.5. If that fails, 155 and lower it could still come. On the IWM, once again, this is showing a lot of weakness, in my opinion, compared to the markets. It came all the way down to 167, tried to bounce. It's going to have to try to fight this 50 moving average around this 173.5 area. If it fails, it's going to come all the way down to 170. If that fails, 167.5 or low come. Overall, the trend does favor the bears. It's continuing to make these lower highs. Be very careful on it. Now, there's two more things I'm going to talk about before I get on with Tesla. The triple Q, in my opinion, is looking very mixed. It looks like it wants to keep going. You could argue it's trying to flag around here. But at the same time, we have some major resistance around this 310 to 313 area. Now, I don't know for sure exactly how this is going to play out. They could manipulate this thing and try to push it even higher, but the odds don't favor that because of how weak Nvidia and Tesla are looking. I don't know if this thing is just going to tank immediately. It could happen that way. Or what could happen is that it tries to push up just a little bit, a couple of dollars, then it ends up just tanking over time, and we start to see this thing slowly downtrend because, in my opinion, it still looks overextended and it does look like it had a topping process. Make sure you watch this 313 area if it does get a breakout. We have some very important resistance there. If it manages to break this somehow, that's going to be surprising, but if it does do that, just to be safe, make sure you're ready for this 315 resistance and this shorts to get squeezed just in case the market makers are thinking that. But I think it's unlikely it actually breaks out that hard when you look at how weak the market's trying to look in different sectors because of the fact that tech looks like it's like topping. I think, once again, the odds favor us either tanking or pushing up a little bit more and then tanking going forward. Finally, what else is bearish for the market is the dollar is looking like it might be ready to bounce. If you look at the dollar, it could be forming a possible inverse head and shoulders. And also on the daily, the dollar came all the way down to 102.5, I think it was, 102 point something, and it actually bounced quite nicely off of that. Now, if the dollar gets a clean bounce, if the dollar is ready for this thing to switch, the momentum is actually becoming less bearish and it's actually looking to me like it's ready to just keep going. So around 102 is actually where it bounced. If it does keep going, it might retest the 50 moving average around this 103.6 area. If that happens, that would be bearish for the markets. Now, I don't know if the dollar is going to just drop a little bit first and then keep going, or if it just keeps pushing up from this point on. If it keeps pushing up due to the tightening of financial conditions, that could be bearish for the markets. The last thing is Tesla. What do I think is going to happen to our friend Tesla? Well, Tesla, once again, on the daily is still showing some signs of weakness because you have to consider the market tried to bounce at the end of the day on Friday and Tesla barely held up. Also, Tesla's lacking volume and overall, the momentum is now shifting in the bear's favor. If you look at the 4 hour on Tesla, it looks to me like it's just getting closer and closer and attracted to filling this gap. It's acting like a magnet. Now, I don't know if intraday Tesla gets like a balance and tries to retest the very low 190s and then it just fails from there and then it just keeps dropping, or if it just tanks from this point and fills the gap. But either way, on either Monday or Tuesday, I believe Tesla will most likely end up filling this gap down here around this 183 area. And the very important support is going to be around 180 flat. So make sure you watch that very carefully. I also want to note that there's always a bullish possibility just in case the market makers step in and start to manipulate everything. If you're bullish on Tesla, make sure you watch the 1 hour 200 moving average around this 193. That's going to be resistance. If we break this, we have more resistance around this 195 zone. This is where the trend line is, the resistance line. Break that, then we have the potential to go to 200. I'm not counting on it because so far the news has been more bearish and also because of what the market is going through. So in order for us to turn very bearish on Tesla, we need a clean break below 188. We did temporarily break below it and hit 187, but we quickly bounced right back to get above it. So we didn't actually get a clean break below it. If that does end up happening, if Tesla does end up getting a clean break below 188, it is most likely going to come all the way down to fill this gap around 183 to 180. And if Tesla is dropping like this, it's likely going to be correlated with many other tech stocks. And if that's the case, that could actually drag down the QQQ. In my opinion, okay, be prepared for anything. I went over the bullish and bearish possibilities based off these levels to watch. But I believe we're most likely on Monday going to see Tesla try to balance in the very beginning of the day, then start dropping. Tesla's going to likely retest 188, and we're likely going to chop around here. If the market still holds up, Tesla could try to hold this 187 to 188 range. It could hold for one more day, or if it breaks it, then we're most likely going to fill the gap. I'm not sure if it's going to happen on Monday or Tuesday or very early next week, but I do believe during one of those days, Tesla's most likely going to fill this gap. And my gut tells me maybe as soon as tomorrow, but once again, be prepared for anything. The odds do favor it eventually filling this gap very, very soon, coming down to 180. I just don't know the exact date. It's very hard to predict, but I do believe it's going to most likely happen tomorrow. That's just my prediction. By tomorrow, we might see Tesla fail at 188 and end up filling this gap. The market's also very manipulated, so all the time insane things could happen. But once again, Tesla is starting to show signs that it's actually curling, it's weakening, and it should come down to fill this gap very, very soon. I do believe it's going to come down to 180. With that said, I went over the main possibilities and I told you what's most likely going to happen. So make sure you're ready for anything and at the same time, be prepared for some potential downside on Tesla just in case. Now, there's some people saying that we could be forming like an inverse cup and handle. That is a possibility. This could be like an upside down cup and handle where we hit this support. We're going to bounce off of it a little bit. Maybe Tesla bounces a little bit tomorrow and then it ends up tanking. I think the odds do favor that. And I do believe Tesla will eventually fill this gap very, very soon. So anyways, thank you all so much for listening. Please enjoy the rest of your Sunday. Remain calm, cool, and collected. And I'll most definitely see you guys in the next one. Tesla to the moon because the long-term future is still incredibly bright. And peace out.